to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast. Tonight we're all here. Robin, Sean, hello.
Woohoo! Hello.
How are we?
Good.
Splendid. Splendid.
Very sedate. And we are joined, very luckily, by the author of one of my favorite books of the year. Definitely up there. 5 Minds. No one else can see that. I'm holding it up to the camera.
We saw it, Chris. We saw it.
And you're all that matter. It is Guy Morpuss. How are you, Guy?
I'm very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Delighted to be on. I've listened to this so much that it's great to be on here myself, finally.
Yeah, that's wicked, man. Thank you so much for supporting us.
It is great to have you, because that is, I have to support Chris there, one stonker of a book.
Oh, yeah.
Right up my alley.
I mean, never mind calling it 5 Minds. You must have had 5 minds to write it. It's unbelievable.
Well, thank you. It's nice to hear that. It was a bit of a struggle keeping it all together in my mind at one stage, and going through the edit process wasn't an easy one with that one, and getting it to actually work properly.
I can imagine it's it's sort of one of those things where you go, I'm struggling with a thing at the moment that's sort of 6 different characters across 2 timelines each, and it's such a mind bugger to keep in line. And then, but you where do you even, did you plot meticulously, or did you write as if this is how time is going to play out and that's how it's going to make sense? Because I found plotting mine is not helping as much as just writing it.
Yeah, I didn't find plotting particularly helped, and I started out with the idea and the first chapter and the last chapter and a little idea of what was going to happen in the middle, and then I just thought I'll fill in the bits as I go along, and it sort of grew from that. But plotting was not a big part.
I think it's I'm a notorious plotter, and I've bought people for ages about how I love to plot, but for this book it isn't working. It seems to get in the way of everything else, and I had detailed diagrams of if this then that, and it became like a really horrible C basic programming code from the 1980s, and you go, right, no, and then not that, and somehow it's a bit more liberating to let it unfold and I think maybe because it's so complicated as yours, that you just need to let it unfold in a way that makes sense. But
yeah, I mean, obviously I've got fairly limited experience for this being my debut, and at the moment putting the structural edits together on the second one, which is equally complicated. But I have to say I have found with both that sometimes you've just got to get on and write and then bin a lot of what you've written.
Yeah.
But it's actually getting the writing down, which makes you see what works and what doesn't and what makes sense. And then obviously you then get an editor who crawls all over it and tells you that half of what you thought made brilliant sense doesn't make sense at all. You've got to redo it all again anyway.
Only you put that. It's a fierce debut.
Oh, yeah.
I
refuse to believe it. I would imagine that. Have you written 20-ish novels under a pseudonym, Guy, before this moment?
This was the first one I've ever finished. I mean, when I was 17, I wrote a couple of short stories and sent them off. I don't know if it still exists, to Interzone magazine, which sent me a very nice rejection back saying, you need to work a bit on your craft. But I felt, I thought Stephen King gets rejections, I'm getting rejections, we're not all that dissimilar. And then I didn't really do anything for another 30 years. I had a go at writing a couple of stories, and they're still sitting in a box behind me, but I never finished anything, never sent it off. And it was only when I sort of hit 50, I thought, maybe now's the time to actually do something about this. So I think it helps having had 30 years of life experience and 30 years of being in court, seeing witnesses and how people behave. You learn quite a lot. But no, this was the first really serious.
I wanted to ask about that, about how your profession influenced you as a writer. Did it influence you? I mean, how did the two come together?
Well, certainly it helped in the sense that I think being a trial advocate, I've been a barrister for 30 years, being a trial advocate, what you're doing at the end of the day is you are actually telling a story, and it may only have an audience of one because I never did a jury trial in my life. I always had just one judge there. But what you're doing is you're taking all the bits of the story that you've been given, putting them together in the most attractive way, and saying, how can I persuade this one man or woman that my client is in the good person here, and they're in the right, and the other side are in the wrong? Because that's actually what advocacy is about. It's not about the law or anything. It's about getting a judge to like you and like your client. And so I think it's the same thing. You're telling a story. The only difference when you're telling a story in a book is you can make it all up yourself. There's still rules, and you've still got to make a coherent world. But if something doesn't work, you can scrap it, and you're not stuck with the facts that you've got when you're a trial lawyer. And also, I think, undoubtedly writing things for 30 years under time pressure, having to keep them as succinct as possible because judges get very bored, having to hold interest of people helps when you're coming to try and write a book. So I had that advantage, which probably other younger authors in different careers don't get. It certainly helped.
I love that. Would you like to take that ability to sort of to rewrite an ending? Would you like to take that from this profession into your other profession? That you could rewrite certain things and mold them the way that you want to?
It certainly would have been useful. I mean, I have to say, it was my profession. I stopped doing trials in May of this year.
Oh, right.
I decided I'd switch full. 30 years in the law. I mean, I absolutely love them, and there've been ups and downs. There've been horrendous hearings. There've been hearings that went brilliantly. I thoroughly enjoyed being on my feet doing it. But after 30 years, you begin to think, maybe it's time for a change. And there's a reason a lot of my contemporaries at age 50 go on and become judges, and that really held no interest for me. I mean, writing seems a lot more fun to me. So I thought this is a good excuse, having got a publishing deal, to say, actually, this is what I want to do for the next however long it lasts, but for a change.
That's amazing.
So I think it's also it's an incredibly clever way of slipping into retirement without anybody noticing that you're doing it, because you never get to retire as being an author. When sort of applying for a mortgage and somebody goes, well, when are you going to retire? And you're like, what are you talking about? I write books.
Yeah.
We've just been through how much money I earn. I write books. This is what are you thinking about retire, you fool? But it's a really snazzy way of doing it, rather than having to judge a while and then. I like it. I think it's snaz.
Yeah, I'm certainly not doing it for the money, I think we probably all know that.
No, for sure.
I'm not sure my wife thought it was the best decision to have made in February last year, just before COVID hit and markets crashed and the world went into turmoil. And I said, oh, by the way, I've just given 12 months notice. But, it seems to be working.
Sorry, Chris, I very rudely jumped in there. Chris, go for it, man.
You find it was just a mention of your wife. So Miranda's question was, has your wife forgiven you for writing a book in secret? Now, this question intrigued me because what did she think you were doing while you were on your laptop for hours on end?
Don't ask that, Chris.
You thought I was... Yes, not that.
It is episode 69, I'm just saying.
No, I just had one of my worst hearings. You can cut this bit out if you like, but sort of taking a step back, the book all came out of what I call tubular eggs, which I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're a rather weird thing that if you ever go into a deli or a sandwich shop and you see all these perfectly formed egg slices, and they're all exactly the same size, and the egg whites and the yolks are all perfectly formed. And I had a client once who said to me, well, doesn't this seem a bit weird to you that you get these eggs like this? And he explained to me that he invented tubular eggs in the 1970s, which is basically you separate out the eggs, you dry them out, then you rehydrate them and you stick them in these long tubes, one inside the other. And once you've done that, you can then let them dry, slice them into all these perfect slices. And so what people are getting in their sandwiches or their delis are not real eggs that are oval and shaped very weirdly. They get all perfect slices. And it put me off ever eating an egg sandwich again. But the point of the story is that they got into litigation with some American company, and we ended up fighting all the way to the Court of Appeal. And I was in the Court of Appeal on my feet for 2 days with 3 judges basically explaining to me for the whole of 2 days why my case was complete rubbish and why my client deserved to lose and was duly going to lose. I remember walking out of court thinking there must be something better I could be doing with my life than this. So I had this vague idea for this story about people sharing bodies, sharing a body and some detective in a body trying to solve a murder, but you can only use it for 4 hours a day. And I thought, actually, why don't I sit down and try and write this? I thought, I'm never going to finish this. So my wife thought I was busy drafting the appeal from the egg case. What I was actually doing was writing a manuscript for a book. And the answer to Miranda's question is no, I don't think she has forgiven me. She seems to think, Julie seems to think it's evidence of some sort of sociopathic behaviour that you can sit down and write a book for 5 weeks and not tell your wife what you're doing.
Also, do you keep finding eggs secreted around the place as a sort of poignant reminder that she's still a bit peeved?
I mean, when you said, Guy, that like you can take this out, like, could you imagine ever taking the anecdote out? That's
No,
unbelievable.
Your face agog, open mouth.
Honestly, tubular eggs. I've written it down here. The lost. What's that guy called? Mike Oldfield. The lost Mike Oldfield album, Tubular Eggs.
Well, if you go on YouTube, I didn't believe my client. If you go on YouTube, you can actually see videos about how they make tubular or long eggs. It is real.
And my head is an absolute shed. It's done me in. That's amazing.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Did you lose the case then? Yeah.
We lost the case, yes. Yeah, no, about halfway through the writing, when I'd got probably about 20,000, 25,000 words in, we got judgment. I remember it was sort of mid-April, it must have been. I remember being really annoyed that I was in the middle of writing this book and I was expected to actually do some work and start earning some money suddenly. And I spent about a week drafting the appeal, which we then duly lost, and then finished the book off. So, and then gave it to my wife and said, you did say to me a couple of years ago, why don't you write this idea down rather than talking to me about it? Well, here it is. Do you want to have a read?
What did she say?
And did you...
She was a little surprised, but she read it and was quite nice about it. She said, no, this reads well, it makes sense. What are you going to do with it? And that was really the next question, because I had absolutely no idea what you do with the manuscript.
I'm going to send it to that tubular egg appeal judge.
What did you do next?
Well, it was only 55,000 words long, so as we all know, that's pretty short for a novel. But I got another case coming up, and I thought, well, it tells the story I want to tell. Everything's in there. You know, I've spent my life telling everyone they should write everything as briefly as possible. So 55,000 words sounds all right to me. And so I sent it off to about 10 agents, and a couple of them just came back straight away and said, no, not interested. But then I think the day after I sent it, Max Edwards, my current agent, said to me, well, you know, I like the first 3 chapters. Can you send me the rest? So I sent it to him. And then I had a slightly nervous weekend because it was a bank holiday weekend in May. And so I didn't hear from him until the Tuesday. And I was just stepping off the train at Waterloo and saw email from Max Edwards. So I thought, well, that's interesting. Wonder what he's got to say. And he said, it's way too short. You know, I like the concept. There's a lot we need to do. Absolutely hate the title. But why don't we meet up and talk about it? And on the back of that, put me on, which was pretty amazing.
Was that the title that it's come out with? Or...
Tubular Eggs?
No, I can't actually say the title because it was called The Something Cuckoo, and Max had 2 problems. One, he thought it was incredibly pretentious and still does, and I quite liked it. But his other point, which was probably more valid, was that it actually gives away who the murderer is, which is why I can't say the name.
Yeah.
But the cuckoo does survive. The cuckoo is there on the cover, and it's my favourite line of the book, which is almost right at the end. It was the final line of the book originally, and I can say it without giving anything away. It's "Cuckoos Can Fly," which was why I called it the whatever cuckoo. But I think Max rightly persuaded me that no one was going to like it, and that no one would remember it, and that giving away the name of the murderer in the title is probably not the best idea for a crime book.
Although that's a twist people wouldn't see coming.
Yeah.
They might thought it was a double bluff, yeah.
Yeah.
I've just pulled up the cover right now so I can have a look, and yeah, it's right there. Yeah.
It is.
Such a cool
Yeah,
cover.
I love the cover. I was told by Max that every author, when they see their cover, hates it the first time, and I absolutely loved that when I saw it. And it's been really cleverly done in-house by Steve Panton at Viper. And what I really like about it is the 5. If you look closely, each of the elements of the 5 is one of the main characters of the book. So the cuckoo is one of the characters, and each of them, it's not giving anything away saying this, but each of them has a different aspect, which is represented by the different bits in the 5.
That is brilliant. We were very lucky to have a chat with Miranda recently. So how did, was this a question of your agent sending, after you'd beefed it up a bit, sending 5 Minds or the Something Cuckoo to to Viper, or how? I mean, how did Miranda and Viper end up being your editor and publisher for this one, man?
We worked on it quite a bit, obviously, because it was, as I say, 55,000 words, and probably half of that has now gone. So it was probably about 25,000 words, which was actually usable in the original manuscript, and it's now 97,000. So there was a fair amount of work went on over the next 5 or 6 months with Max to knock it into shape. And then September, so almost exactly 2 years ago, he sent it out to the usual 15, 20 or 25 publishers or whatever. And I thought it was in great shape, and everyone had been very excited about it. And so I thought, oh, it'll be a day or two, and someone will be phoning me up saying, there's an auction going on, and everyone's going to offer you lots of money for this, and there's 10 people who want to publish it. And the thing I'd said to Max was, look, I didn't want to know bad news. I was in the middle of a trial doing something else. I thought, I've got lots of things to do. Just phone me up when there's good news and when we've got a publisher. And of course, what then happened was there was just stunned silence for about a month, and I barely heard from Max because there was no good news to give. And he, in the meantime, had plenty of rejections from editors. But about a month later, he started to get some interest, and he said, "Oh, I've got a couple are interested, and Viper are particularly interested. But what I'm going to do is give them till next week, all the publishers, to come back to me." And then Viper stepped in. Miranda came in with a preemptive offer on it, which we accepted. So that's how I ended up with Viper, which frankly is a brilliant place to have ended up, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, given what Miranda's been doing over the last couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, their work, when I see that little Viper logo, is a stamp of approval for me. I know I mentioned that to Miranda when we were on there, but everything they've done I've been so fascinated and interested by, but there's variety there, right across the gamut, and really bold work. What they're doing is something really interesting.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, she's made some interesting choices, rather than just going for lots of traditional crime or police procedural, or the sort of thing that you could do to be safe with a new imprint, given it's only been going for 18 months, 2 years. She could have played it safe, and she hasn't. She's got some very interesting different books, and as a result, she's had a lot of success very early on. And we'll see what happens with 5 Minds. But I feel privileged to be amongst the authors she's got, and I'm hoping that I'm not going to be the one letting the side down.
I wouldn't have thought so, man. I would not have thought so.
I realise at this point, Guy, do you want to tell us a little bit about 5 Minds?
Yeah, sorry. 25 minutes in, we haven't even asked Guy what it's about yet.
Yes, I suppose I probably ought to, because yes, I do remember when when Miranda was on a couple of weeks ago with Janice Hallett, and she kept saying, "Janice, tell them about the book. Tell them about the book." I could hear that voice in my ear saying that. Yeah, basically, it's speculative fiction. So you take the real world, you give it a bit of a tweak, and then you try and play with the consequences and see what happens. And in 5 Minds, the tweak to the world is that you can share a body with other people, and playing with that as to what happens, you then say, well, what happens if you find you're sharing a body with other people and one of them might be a murderer, and worse yet, maybe trying to kill you? So that's the sort of elevator pitch for 5 Minds. To give a slightly longer explanation, it's a world in which at the age of 17, you choose what you want to be. Do you want to be a worker, which is basically you stay the same? Do you want to be a hedonist? You live a state-sponsored life of luxury, but you die very young at 42. Do you want to be an android, which is that you download your mind into an artificial body and live to 80? Or the most radical choice, and the one that gives the book its title, its current title, is do you want to be a commune or a schizo where you share your body with 4 other people and you only get to use it for 4 hours a day? And it sounds like the worst option of all, but the 2 big advantages are that you get a brand new body every 25 years, so you're never going to grow old, and you live to 142, so longer than any of the others. And what the book does is it follows the, I'd say adventures, but it's not quite that, the sort of horrendous mess that a commune of these 5 people get into when at the end of their first 25-year life, they decide to go to a death park, which is a place where they can go and gamble time and try and win more time. And then one of them, Kate, accepts an offer from someone which turns out to be too good to be true. They get into all sorts of trouble and realize very soon that someone's trying to kill them, and they're not terribly sure if it's one of them trying to kill the others or someone external to them. So that's really it in a nutshell.
And you've got to go and buy it, listeners. That's. Can I ask about influences? What's your influences, Guy?
I mean, I think probably a lot of sci-fi, obviously, I've read over the years, but also read a lot of crime. And I started out reading whatever was on my father's bookshelf when I was very young. I've always been an avid reader, and I started out, say, with Alistair MacLean, Desmond Bagley, Gavin Lyle, all these sort of thriller writers that he loved. And I think you learn from there about keeping things pacey and keeping it moving on. And then I also read a lot of the detective stories, the sort of Sherlock Holmes and that sort of thing. I never read any Agatha Christie, to the horror of Miranda when I told her after she'd signed the contract that I'd never read an Agatha Christie book. And she said, how can you write a crime book and never read Agatha Christie? So I have read several since. But then in my teens, I got quite into sci-fi, and Philip K. Dick was quite a big influence. And you know, I like to think the sort of ideas in Five Minds are the sort of things that Philip K. Dick was playing with, although I'm sure he did it much better and much more shortly than I did, because he did it all in short stories, pretty much. And then, to some extent, you know, I've read a lot less over the last 30 years because I've been too busy reading law. You know, I've read when I can, but it's been a lot less than in my teen years. But those are really the influences. And then, you know, recently things like Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. One of the others I think that's been floating around the back of my mind, probably that came out 20 years ago, was only recently on Netflix, was the Altered Carbon book by Richard Morgan, which was again about transferring minds. So those are the ones I tend to sort of enjoy, the speculative ones where it's not too unreal, but it's a slight tweak on reality, and you know, seeing where you go with it. That I find quite fun because it's exploring new ideas in an interesting way, and you know, not particularly philosophical or deep way, but exploring them in a fun way, because I always think the main thing a book ought to do is entertain.
Amen. Amen. Whew.
It's interesting because I kind of felt a bit of William Gibson in there as well. I was sort of just in that creation of an ultimate question of, you know, there's 5 of you in there, one of you is a murderer, is one of you a murderer, is somebody else on the outside. It's like a locked room adventure, but it's so high concept but simple concept at the same time that you just go, damn, it's genius. Where did that come from?
Well, that's very kind. I mean, I'm sure there are influences, yes, of Gibson and lots of others. You know, Asimov, Clarke. I couldn't reel them all off. I've read, you know, thousands of books in my life, and I'm sure there are bits of them hanging around. But you know, ultimately, what you're trying to do is put a little bit of a new twist on it and come up with something that
Absolutely
hasn't quite been done before, which is what I was trying to do with the sharing bodies idea.
I was very
sorry because it's bloody unique.
Yes, blimey. I was really lucky to get sent an early look, Guy. But I was scheduling stopped me from, because we all get, you know, I'm sure it's exactly the same. We get sent lots of books, don't we? And I managed to actually get to listen to this as an audiobook. Have you heard the audiobook?
I have. Only it sounds slightly narcissistic, but my wife and I went up to a wedding in Newcastle a couple of weeks ago, and I thought this is a good chance to actually listen to some of the audiobook.
Yeah.
I'd only ever heard 40 seconds of it on Twitter before. And it was a real revelation, because I think Joe Jameson, who's done it, has done a fantastic job.
It's a tour de force.
It's like listening to your book on stage, I think.
It is, yeah.
to me, it gave me a slightly different insight into it. You suddenly hear what he's done, particularly with some of the foreign characters like Mr. Guskov, who sort of sits in the shadows, and to hear he gives him a life that wasn't quite what I had in mind, but is something different. And I thought it was a real revelation. I haven't quite finished it yet, but I thought he's done an amazing job on it with such a difficult task.
Yeah, it's a piece of performance. This is a performance. It's not just a drab, bland narration at all. Not that there are many of those around at all, but it's just, I remember listening to audiobooks when I was a lot younger, and that was very much what you would end up with, was just a sort of a drab, very uninspiring delivery of it. But no, this was absolutely brilliant. I loved it, and I would recommend this to everyone else as well. Listening is just this is a really great way of listening to this. It was because I knew it was. I thought in my head, right, I'm going to wait till I can get my hands on the audiobook of this one, because of how I want to see how it was challenged. Because I did the same thing with Joseph Knox's True Crime Story, because that's all in. There's an expression, and Miranda used it, and I'm not erudite enough to know what it is, but when it's in
epistolary, I think.
Epistolary, that's the one, yeah. In that format, and that was also like a play, True Crime Story, like and really, I think certainly True Crime Story in 5 Minds, the audio, having it on audio gives it a chance to express itself in a whole different way. It was really great, really, really great. Could only highly recommend them both.
Yeah, as I say, I was very impressed with it, and I did feel sorry for Joe having to do it, because it can't have been an easy one with 5 different characters in the same body. And I did get some queries as to how do I do this when someone's in the body doing, it's a man in the body pretending to be a woman, but in a man's body. What voice am I meant to use?
Yeah, you don't want somebody suddenly turning out all 2 Ronnies on you, do you?
No. That's outstanding.
Should we hit some Twitter questions?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure.
The main one, well, not the main one, but a couple of different people. So Imran Mahmood, Debbie, Italy, I think, and Craig Jarvis all want to know, what would you have chosen at the age of 17?
What a great question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it rather puts me on the spot, because originally I think I would have said I would have been a commune, because that sounds the most interesting. It's the most long-lived. I'm with Mike, who says, I want to get a new body every 25 years. I'm the one athlete who'll never grow old. So all of that is really appealing. But then having written it, and also I then wrote a sort of choose your own adventure, which is on my website, which gives you even more insight into how is this going to work in practice. I realized actually it's a real mess, and what you do in 4 hours, you spend half of your 4 hours trying to pick up the pieces from the last person, then you spend the last half hour trying to prepare for the next person. So it's a very difficult way of actually living a life. And as you see from the book, it completely. So I've gone off that. So I think I would do the same as Kate does in the book, by a sort of process of elimination. And I wouldn't be a worker, because I like change. I want something a bit different. I wouldn't want to be a hedonist, because I'm now 10 years older than the age at which all the hedonists die. And I don't think at 17 I'd have taken the decision I only wanted to live to 42, however luxurious the life. So I think I would have gone for an android, which is put your body in, your mind into an artificial body, live to 80. That seems like a decent age to live to, and you'll never get ill. So I think probably it's a bit of a safe choice, but probably not quite as safe as being a worker.
What I want to know what my colleagues here would say.
I would have gone ahead and missed 100%. I think I did, and now at 47, I'm 5 years past expired. I'm feeling I thought 42. Do you know that's fair enough? I'd have taken that.
Yeah.
I remember being sort of 11, and my mum having scans on her head, because she was having these incredible migraines. They were worse than migraines. And at one point they said, we're going to scan because it might be brain cancer. And I thought, well, she's nearly 40. She's had a good innings. And I remember that quite distinctly when I turned 40, and I thought, it's a fair point. That is a good innings. So I would have gone hedonist, I think.
Yeah.
I think quite a few would choose that. And the reason I actually chose it as 42, and the reason I had the hedonist, was I remember reading ages ago, and I've never found this study again, was that someone did a survey of the NFL football players and said, if you could win a Super Bowl ring, but you had to take a drug that meant you would die at, I think it was 40, would you take the drug and die at 40 knowing you won the Super Bowl? And I think it was something like 70% of them said yes, they would, these sort of 20-year-old athletes. And that just stuck with me. I've never found the statistic again or the survey.
Oh my God.
So I think it is actually quite a real choice that people would make.
I'm definitely a hedonist as well. I'd have 42 incredible years, smash it all up, and then sign off big time. Chris, what would you do?
Yeah, hedonist, I reckon. Yeah.
Oh my God. That is not at all what I was expecting you to say.
Really? What did you think it was?
I thought you would have gone Android.
No, I don't know. I think because
See, my difference is that I had my kid at 21. At 42, she was 21.
Yeah, I'd have started a little bit younger on the
So you're like,
procreatory thing.
Whatever. She's old enough to make her own. She'll have made her choice 4 years before.
Yeah, whereas my
Yours
kids
are
would be
little.
like 12 or something.
Yeah, Chris. That's
not the time.
Yeah, but if I was a
We've
hedonist,
thought
I probably
about
wouldn't
it
have kids.
too
I'd
much.
just be partying it up.
That's it. You'd be
I
at
would-
gigs non-stop, wouldn't you, Chris?
I would, yeah. I'd be like, I'd be in a rock band or something. Yeah, I want to be a hedonist right now. Come here.
You'd be at a Michael Bolton concert with me, Chris. Is what you'd do.
Oh, good.
Smashing people up in the crowd.
I don't think that's what happens at Michael Bolton concert, Chris.
What
I'm
happens
sorry.
when you invite a hedonist along?
I really do think we've thought about this too much.
We have. Let's ask another question. The lovely Dan Stubbings would like to know, what was the most difficult scene to write and why?
I've got to be a bit careful about answering this, that I don't give too much away. As I said, when I started the book, I only had 3 scenes in mind, and one was the opening chapter, one was the final one, which ends with the cuckoos can fly, and the middle bit, which is the sort of pivotal chapter in Montreal, which everything turns on events that happen in Montreal and happen in the log cabin near Montreal. But I can't really say much more about that. And that, I think, was the most difficult scene to write, because it needed to get it right from a sort of feminine point of view. And obviously I'm a man writing about, again, not trying to say too much, writing about what's a difficult issue to write about as a man, I think. And getting it right from a feminine point of view was difficult. You know, the first draft, Max told me that doesn't work at all. I did have about 4 or 5 female early readers, so I sort of bounced it off them. Then obviously Miranda, my editor, is female, so she had her take on it. And I think it works in the end, but it's probably the scene I agonized most about, and it's the one that could have offended people the most if I got it wrong. So although it's absolutely pivotal to the book and was there from the beginning, it's probably the one that's gone through the most edit from my original 55,000 word manuscript to what's now in your hands.
Was it in the original 55?
It was, although in a quite different form.
Yeah.
The basic idea was always there, but I always knew what the basic idea was going to be for the sort of pivotal point in the book that motivates what happens. But there's probably only about 5 words that are the same over 4 or 5 pages.
Perfect. But the concept is still in the timeline. I love that.
And Craig Jarvis asked, I think you saw this one about Ready Player One. Is that something you've read, and was that an influence or not so much?
Again, it was, I wouldn't say it was a massive influence. It was in the back of my mind. I'd certainly read it a few years ago whenever it came out, and loved the concept. I didn't see them as being that similar. I mean, if you asked me, was it similar, I would have said probably closer to 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. They're not the same in that it's someone waking up in a different body every morning and reliving the same day. But in Hardcastle, I'm thinking, oh, that's a very clever idea. It's a little bit close to my final idea. I want to write it. So that was partly the reason.
Lovely. And my question, I'm going to tag on to the end of these, is, the world that you've built feels very real, even though, like, the death part, the first bit, it's very easily explained for what could have been quite a difficult concept to get across. did that take a lot of thinking, or did that come quite naturally?
Well, the death part came about writing it when I wrote the first chapter on a spaceship, and I had this idea about people taking sort of end of life cruises. Then I thought, well, what are you going to do on these cruises? Why don't you have these virtual games where you can gamble for time? And then I thought, well, actually, if I set this on a spaceship, that's 50% of my readership gone, because people don't want to read books on spaceships. They'll just say sci-fi and won't read it. So then I had this idea of setting it in some dystopian park, and then it just sort of grew from there. And I very much try to explain as little as possible, because I think the more you describe and the more you explain, the more you're imposing your vision rather than letting the reader have their own. And everyone's going to have their own view of what a death part looks like, and it's probably not like mine.
Yeah.
But it just sort of grew generically from that.
I think
the advantage of the game.
I really do think it's an interesting thing of just balancing the science fiction of a concept with the narrative strength of something, because the thing that I'm working on at the moment, I'd say it's definitely science fiction, in that it works on a bit of quantum physics that isn't currently available. But if we can skirt over the science of it, the reality is it's basically asking a fundamental question of, would you do something different if you had the chance to do it again? And if you could go back and change it, would you take that opportunity? And that opens up that whole vortex. And I keep kind of justifying it in terms of it's about as science fiction as Time Traveler's Wife is science fiction, which is fundamentally science fiction, but it's not. It's a love story across multiple times. And it's weird because people will, as you say science fiction, no, I'm not for it. But you're like, well, it's not cult following science fiction. It's not a science based sort of, there's no spaceships and tribes and other languages and other things. It's just a what if this was possible concept. And where would we be in 50 years, 100 years, 2000 years? What would we do?
I think that's really interesting, because that's this is the question of genre again, that whereas genre is so sort of like heavily applied to all the books that we write, that kind of thing, right down to where we're pigeonholed into very small spots, aren't we? All four of us, into what it is that we write, when in fact that there's the very broad genre that we're all in is what if, isn't it? What if that someone died in this way, or what if later in life, in a few years' time, you were able to make such decisions as what resulted in 5 Minds, that kind of thing. And it's like, it does. I find that resonated with me there a second, then, Guy, when you said that if I write about this, I'll lose half my readership. Yeah. And that's like, it should never be like that, really, should it? But we all have to do this bit for commercial reasons, really, isn't it? Because booksellers and publishers find it easier to put us in certain places because of the choices that they would like us to make.
Yeah, I think what Sean was saying really resonates with me about and you, Rob, the what if question, which is really what speculative fiction is about. And it's just, what if there was one thing that was slightly different, what would happen? And to me, that's not science fiction. Or not in the sense that people think about it. People think about science fiction being rockets and robots and things, whereas I think Philip K. Dick was the first one who showed me that's not science fiction. Science fiction, may be about that, but if you want to give it a different label, speculative fiction is just asking sort of fundamental questions about if something was slightly different in the future, or in this world, like Man in the High Castle, something slightly different, how would it play out? And to me, that is just a story. And it's a shame if people don't pick up a book because they think it's not for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had loads of people who've said, particularly some of the authors who, very much in the crime genre, saying, oh, I'd never really have read 5 Minds because it doesn't look like a crime book when you initially look at it. But actually, I realize now it's just a crime story. It's it's basically a locked room crime story where you're all locked in the same body.
Mm. This is the ultimate locked room, but it's interesting.
Yeah, the ultimate locked room mystery. Yeah,
if you'd gone for a spaceship locked room mystery, it wouldn't have been anywhere near as interesting as using it's using a different vessel. Your story,
Yeah.
as in it's using a body, but the resulting in your instinct is right to look at it and go, spaceship, nah, body, yes, much. And I think that's part of the writer's gift, is to, you kind of go through things that you think, well, should it be in this, should it be in that, no, it's got there. All these people, all these characters are in a body. Now fight it out, not in a spaceship, not in different rooms, not in one cell, not in just in one collection of cells that calls itself a human form. Go.
It had sorry, Chris.
I was just saying what Sean said was poetry.
I know. You'd think he's some kind of writer, wouldn't you? Flipping it. Yeah. It had it felt like in the same sort of world or the same sort of heart as Sarah Moorhead, S.E. Moorhead's Witness X.
Yeah.
And that kind of similar sort of, crime at heart, but sort of gentle speculation about it as well. There's another book behind you, I think, Guy. Is it Q? Christina Dalsher behind. Yeah. This is just me being a nerd, but what did you think of that?
Oh, I love that. I mean, it was another one where it's a very clever concept, and you take the concept and then you just ask, well, where would people go with it? How would society cope with this? And that's really the sort of book I really love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was due to come on at one stage, and then she was like ill or something, and then we never got back in touch. But both her books have been really, really great.
Really good.
Talk to her, yeah.
Really good, yeah. She's got a new one coming as well.
Ah, sweet. Maybe I'll get back in touch.
What a man, Chris. What a man. What a jolly man.
Guy, at this stage, shall we play a game?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I found possibly my favorite reviewer in the world. Guy does not, on Amazon at least, have a 1-star review. So I've had to go with a different book, and the book is unrelated, and it's only because it was on my phone already because I was buying it for my kids. But it's Not Now, Birdered, which I've never read, but apparently it's a good one. It's a little picture book. So I picked a random reviewer who gave it 1 star, a kid's book. And so I've picked her, and she is incredible. So
God bless you, Scrooge. 1 star for a kid's book. Goodness me.
And you'll see from her reviews that is pretty ridiculous as well. So I've picked 4 items. The reviews are very quick, so we can get through them quite quickly. The first one is Cantu shea butter, tea tree, and jojoba heron scalp oil.
I think it's jojoba.
Oh, is it?
Is that how you say it?
Jojoba.
I'm just taking the piss. Go for it.
Is it not? Is it not? Pran?
I don't think it's got anything to do with jobbies, but anyway, let's just get on with the quiz.
No, I don't, because I need to know, because there's a jojoba thing in my shower right now, and I want to know how I'm supposed to be saying that.
I think Dr. Google will be your friend.
Yeah,
right, okay.
We'll find that out in the outtakes. Right, 1 star or 5 star for the scalp oil?
Shall I go first? I think anyone who's going to give a 1 star to a children's book is probably not going to be very satisfied with much that they've bought, and I suspect it's probably a 1-star review.
Okay.
See, I'm going to say that she was angry enough from her knits to have scritched herself into a place where she's going to give it a 5-star review.
Okay. Rob?
So hard. I don't think she knows what things are, so I think she's been using it as cooking oil, and we'll give it a 1 star because it's not very good for that. This children's book is not good at being a children's book. 1 star. So yeah.
The Scalp and Hero got 5 stars.
Oh.
And here is the review. It's okay.
5 stars. It's okay.
5 stars. It's okay.
Jesus.
Full stop. So that's the Hero.
I imagine her husband.
Well, that was the review. The whole review.
That's it.
It's okay. I imagine her husband is inundated with compliments on a daily basis.
They're all that well, not quite as short as that, but quite short, which is why I've got a few more. The next one is kids multivitamin gummies in strawberry flavor.
Are they all either 1 or 5?
Yes.
Okay.
1 star. Don't taste the strawberries.
Okay.
Pure hatred, 1 star.
Pure hatred, 1 star. Guy?
I'm going to go for 5 star this time. I think she bought these to cheer up the children after the book was such a disappointment.
And Guy takes the points. 5 stars.
No, what a dreadful life these kids have, disappointed children's books. And they made better by being fed vitamins.
Well, not quite. There's a twist here.
Oh, my word.
Good vitamins. One of my kids didn't like the flavour, but I can confirm it isn't bad.
Is that like the thing that, you get on the kind of twist, Chris, where it's on a book and it says, with a twist you'll never see coming?
Yeah, 5 star. The kid didn't like it, but I did. Or if not liked it, it wasn't bad.
It wasn't
Yeah,
as bad.
bad.
It wasn't total.
It was
joy.
okay. 5 stars. It was okay.
It wasn't as bad as that book we bought.
Children's classic. The next item is Flash multi-purpose spray in Blossoms flavour.
I can't believe anybody wouldn't like that. It's got to be a 5.
Got to be a 5.
I'm going to just be different and say 1. I think she was probably disappointed with it.
Okay.
Why you buy that from Amazon anyway?
I think this one made her cry herself to sleep with rage. So 1 star.
Okay. The title of the review is okay. And the text underneath says, not very good. I prefer the original one. 5 stars. And this might be my favourite. It's a play box of 150 marbles. So 150 marbles.
1 star. It had 149 in it.
Okay. She seems that pedantic, doesn't she? Guy?
I think probably 1 star. I think, I don't know, one of the children swallowed them or something.
Thinking it was better than a vitamin.
I think I have to go 1 star as well on account of she's just such an ungracious cow. There's no way that 150 marbles is going to satisfy anyone.
Yeah.
She's probably trying to do some solar system, model thing, and they weren't the right size. Or she's going to be there. She's just angry. Why would she buy marbles? She's lost her marbles.
A replacement job.
Yeah, replacement. So you're all going 1 star for this one?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
The title is Broke. The review is, came with a broken lid. I'm not very happy. 5 star.
She's an icon. She's an absolute icon.
I don't think she understands the star system.
No, I don't. But verified purchase, so it all counts. So that's not who you're dealing with, Guy. Usually we face sort of those type of people that have reviewed the guest book, but you were lucky today.
Well, no, you wrote too good a book for them.
Yeah.
Guy, that's the big problem.
You say that. I may not have a 1 star yet on Amazon, but I was telling Chris earlier that I have someone on Goodreads who hated the book so much that he not only went on and gave me a 1 star review, but he then went back a couple of days later and gave me a 2 star review.
What?
Oh, that is brutal.
So he gave you a 1, then he came back and gave you a 2.
Apparently, I didn't actually read it, but my children very kindly pointed this out to me.
Bless their souls.
Yes. Oh, Guy, what are you reading at the moment?
The one I've just finished is something a bit different. That's not something I'd normally have picked up, called Miss Iceland, and I'm bound to get the name wrong, by Order Ava Olafsdottir, I think she's called. And I picked it up the other day in Waterston simply because I'd been in Iceland in August, and so it sort of grabbed my attention, and someone told me how brilliant it was. And it was very good, but not the sort of thing I'd normally read. It's a bit literary, and it's about a sort of novelist in, I think, Eastern Iceland who goes to Reykjavik, and she's trying to write a novel, and it's all really character driven rather than an enormous amount happening in the plot. So it was interesting as a sort of diversion for me, and I quite enjoyed it, and it has the benefit of being quite slim as well. And thoroughly recommended. I enjoyed it, but it's not my sort of normal fare. And so if I can name a second one, which will be very familiar to you, which is probably the last one in our sort of genre that I read and really enjoyed, is
Deity.
Cool.
Absolutely fantastic. Really loved that. I haven't read all of them in the middle, but I've read the first couple and then Deity, which I picked up at Harrogate. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Very cool.
That's coming out soon as well.
Yeah, that's another book and series that audiobook gives a whole new lease of life to, or a whole different sort of, I don't know, expression. Happy. Chris, what are you reading?
Good words, Rob. Good words.
Thank you. Chris, what are you reading, man?
I'm reading Psychopaths Anonymous by Will Carver. I've just started it. I'm about 30 pages in and absolutely loving that. And listening, I don't usually listen to audiobooks, but because I can walk to my work now with no child with me, I'm listening to audiobooks on the way back and forth. And it's only like a 10-minute walk, so I don't get very much done. But Bob Mortimer's autobiography, which is just glorious.
Nice.
What about yourself?
Well, I'm going to ask Sean first. Sean, what are you reading?
So I am actually reading. We got well, I don't know if you both got, but I got the proof of Her Perfect Twin, Sarah Bonner's.
Yes.
And I was like, and started reading it because it has a very similar concept to somebody who submitted to us, and it's brilliant. So then I'm halfway through.
Oh, fabulous!
You kind of sit there and go, oh, I'm just reading, and it's weekend, and I don't have to read submission, and it's brilliant. And then on audiobooks, I am listening to Peter Kay's autobiography.
Very good.
Again, you don't. I kept realizing that I was getting an email from Audible going, "You have 6 credits," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I pay you every month. You buggers are just killing off my credits from before that I am not using. So I'm paying for shit. I'm not listening. So now I better download some shit." And so I'm listening to Peter Kay, which is delightful.
Oh, lovely. I like this. You guys have gone for a sort of like, I'm reading and I'm listening. I'm going to do the same.
There's method to our madness. All will be revealed.
Is there?
Shush. Go back in your hole. What are you reading?
What have I missed? We're live. Sorry, we're not live, but we're being recorded. I am reading No Way to Die by Tony Kent. It's the new one. And as always with Tony, we are in the territory of the electric, the topical, and the blisteringly exciting. Yeah, it's great. It's just great. Love everything Tony does. Just really, really super. Yeah, I'm early days in it, but I know I'm in it for the big one, the long haul, and just like his 3 previous books, I know, I know I'm going to enjoy this. I know I'm going to enjoy this. It's great. Really enjoying it. Audiobook wise, because I still haven't quite finished Slough House by
What?
Mick Herron. I know I've still not finished it.
You're not finished Slough House?
Yeah, I've not finished it yet. So yeah, that's what I'm about an hour to go in that one. I mean, it's sublime as always. But I don't like it, like the audiobooks with those. They're narrated by Sean Barrett, and they're just so good.
You need to do a little drive. Do a drive out.
I know. Yeah, I could. If only life would give such, lovely, blissful hours of nothing to do. Damn it, life! I need to be a hedonist.
Although I don't think they'd waste their time driving around listening to an audiobook. They'd be smashed.
The definition of hedonism, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is that because we're, that might be our pace of life now, that the definition of hedonism is an hour to listen to an audiobook.
I think we've got the person that can. We're lucky that we've got the expert that can tell us.
Yes, yeah. the guy that actually invented this world can answer this question for us.
Does a hedonist listen to audiobooks is our final question, Guy.
I don't think so. No, I imagine something very different for hedonism. I mean, I don't think they're listening to a lot of audiobooks. Do you?
That looks like none of us can be hedonists, boys. I'm so sorry.
Well, let's all put the equation. I'm happy to give up the audiobooks.
Yeah. If you'll let me have audiobooks, will you let me have 40 years instead of 2? Will you dock me 2 years, like the penalty of 2 years?
I'm not sure it's negotiable, I really.
Such.
Oh, God.
It's my world, I make the rules.
Yes, quite right, Guy.
And sorry, can I ask one last thing? I know that it's the hours up and stuff, but book 2, Guy, can we know something about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm just getting to the end of structural edits on that. I'm hoping to finish them this week. And as you can imagine, you know what the process is like. So it's been a fairly painful process over the last couple of months, with me giving a manuscript to Miranda that I thought was brilliant and perfect, and her pointing out to me all the ways in which it could be improved, which she's obviously completely right about, and I've begun to realize that over the last 6 weeks. But the story is speculative crime fiction again. It's set on Vancouver Island. It's a shipwreck, starts it off in about 1804, and there's one survivor. And the twist in the world this time is that the descendants of this one survivor, who gets adopted by the local First Nations tribe, his descendants discover they have the ability to turn back time once in their life only, and only by 6 hours. So it's a power, but not a particularly useful power for the whole of your life. And the question is then, what do you do with that? And the story itself is set in 2045, roughly. It's still on Vancouver Island. It's a tech billionaire who is a member of a descendant of the shipwreck survivor. He's created this massive mansion in Vancouver Island. Someone is murdered, and the local special constable, who doesn't really much about investigating crimes, but she's the only law in the area, she has to look into it, and every time she gets towards some sort of solution, someone turns back time for 6 hours, and she can no longer remember what she did in the previous investigation and has to start all over again. So I'm having some fun with it, but it's got a lot of different timelines, and it's quite complicated to try and head at the same time.
When can we
really like to bugger with your brain, don't you?
When can we expect this, Guy?
It's coming out next September, so a year on from Five Minds. I did send Miranda a message this morning saying, why did you let me write such a complicated book? Because it's basically like whack-a-mole game. Every time you solve one problem, then 2 others stick their head up and say, oh, what about me? And talking about the effect. So I'm near the end, and I'm enjoying it, and I hope it will be good fun. It's different from Five Minds, but similar sort of idea of twist something and see what happens.
Sounds amazing.
It really does.
It sounds a nightmare to write. All credit to you, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, Guy, you're writing amongst the boldest, bravest, most interesting books out there at the minute, man. Can't wait to see what you do next. And we'll be tuning in all the way through.
Well, it's very kind, and it's been a delight to come on here and talk to you about it. Thank you.
Lovely to have you.
Yeah. Great. Say bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.